Welcome to Focused on Forward. The purpose of this podcast is to focus on recovery from life situations, be it a disease, chronic or acute, perhaps the loss of someone so dear to you in death, or a change of life patterns that has affected you so profoundly that you have no choice but to find your new normal and become focused on moving forward. Each episode is designed to show the positivity that people bring to each and every one of their stories, the successes they've had, ways that they have become so definitively focused on moving forward. We look forward to sharing their stories, and we hope that they inspire you just as much as they have inspired us. Thanks for listening, and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to Focused on Forward. Today we have the privilege of speaking with Stacey Toy. Stacey has a very intriguing story. So intriguing for me because of the fact of her husband's addiction, his loss, and what she did afterwards that for many of us may not been able something that we would be able to do. But it's very interesting, and I'm going to leave it at that because I want to make sure that Stacey has a chance to tell you herself. So Stacey, thank you so much for being a guest with us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, excited to have you. So what I'll do now, Stacey, is I'm just going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to let you tell the good folks all about Stacey Toy and your story about your journey, what happened, and what how you moved forward from it.
Sure. Okay. So, when I was growing up, I grew up on a farm. We wanted for nothing, but we didn't have extra, if you know what that means. So essentially my parents told me like we couldn't write a check to have you travel the world or to go do whatever you want to do. So you kind of have to figure out other ways how to do it, like go scholarships, go to school, things like that. So I did that route. And I in the process unknowingly to everybody else was taking a lot of painkillers like opioids and stuff because I had a really bad ovarian cysts and things like that. And so when I got into Oxford, I moved overseas and was going to school over at the best school in the world. I'm taking about 70 to 100 Vicodin a day. Now, mind you, this was pre-opioid epidemic or pre-opioid crisis. So it was like 17, 20 years ago where, it wasn't an issue yet. So when I did actually try and help, try and ask for help and things like that, it became very difficult because it wasn't like I was using heroin or underage drinking, or I mean, it was my own prescriptions, and so it was like nobody knew what to do with me.
So
So
I'm sorry to interrupt real quick, but I just want to make sure that the audience heard the number correctly because this still floors me. It was 70 to 100 a day,
yes,
correct?
at the peak, yeah.
Okay. That's a
Yep,
lot.
it is. I mean, I've gotten tests done in the past with like UCLA, Color, uh, Genomap, like all these different ones that have tested my genetics, and it's essentially like opioids, uh, fentanyl, all that kind of stuff has the least reduced effect, and my body also metabolizes things just quicker. Like so, a
Oh,
normal cup of
okay.
coffee, like where you is could drink one cup of coffee and be fine, I'd need 3 or 4 cups of coffee in order just to feel it because my like the way that my body metabolizes things.
Okay,
That's
gotcha.
also was like 5 years of building up to that too. So it's not just like, oh, one day I woke up and I took 100 Vicodin, and no, I mean,
Right.
it was like the tolerance level was building up to it. So yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was like the craziest, hardest time of my life, which I would not go back and regret because it was the best thing that ever happened to me, even though it was the worst thing that ever happened to me. But flash forward about 9 years ago on Veterans Day. My husband passes away. He comes home from the Navy. We had 2 children at the time, 6 and 4 years old. He had come home because he wanted to be closer to the family and find a job here. And PTSD happened. Like he was trying to get help. He was seeing people. He was on treatment for depression and a lot of different things. So ultimately on Veterans Day in 2011, we got married on 7/7/7, and he died on 11/11/11 on Veterans Day. So we were both 28 years old, and our kids were 6 and 4. So it was a crazy time in my life. But I remembered being an addict. Well, I mean, and dealing with all of this stuff. And so it really bothered me that I couldn't help my husband. So I decided to help the person that was still around, and that was the person who basically shot him up and killed him. And so I ended up reaching out to him and meeting with him in a halfway house, and I took him out to lunch right after my husband died. And I basically said, like, I know how this feels. I will help you to become the husband to your wife and your father to your two sons that mine can no longer be, and I'll forgive you. So he like couldn't believe it because nobody would be, was normally willing to help him. So he's like, "You're the one person who's supposed to hate me, and yet you're the only person willing to help me." And I'm like, "I've been there before, man." So, so I did the best I could. I helped him. I talked to him all the time. I picked him up and take him to work. I stop and visit him, and I mean we kept in touch with everything. And so, he was shooting 50 plus bags a day at the time, and he was the worst of them all. And currently, right now, him and I are the only ones left alive. Everybody else has been the death of addiction. Out of
Oh,
like
wow.
6 or 7 people, me and him are the only two alive now. So, and I'm really
Wow.
proud of him. He's got his own business, he's got his family back, so I'm excited.
So, how did you come to the realization that this is what you wanted to do? Because now, admittedly, most people aren't going to look at the situation and say, "This is the person that my spouse died with, or the reason why my spouse died. Let's go help them."
Uh,
So, what was it? I mean, other than the fact that you had some addiction issues yourself, what was it that made you say, this is what I want to
Um,
do?
because nobody wanted to help me when I was going through it. The only person who did help me was my dad. And I'm a go against the grain kind of person, like I don't care. Like they all wanted me to, put him in prison and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's a second home. What is it gonna do? Um, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth leave the world with a bunch of toothless blind people, in my opinion. So
Well, yeah, there is that, for sure. Okay. So now you mentioned that he had so his level of addiction was pretty strong,
Mhm.
50 plus bags a day. So where, how long was the process for helping him through his addiction?
um, like from start to finish.
Sure. I mean, from the time where you said, "Hey, I'm going to help you," to the point where you no longer had to help him.
Oh, well, the thing is he was really good at helping himself too. Once somebody like just gave him a little bit of support, which was a good thing. I gave him a Bible, I gave him um cell phone minutes, and I gave him like rides back and forth to work when it was really cold or rainy or any of that kind of stuff. And nobody else was working with him. And then I'd stop and I'd say, "Let's go have lunch," and I'd buy him lunch and stuff so he didn't have to eat the halfway house lunch. And so, it was just one of those things where he was at the lowest point. Nobody was ever willing to help him or give him another shot just because, he's screwed up his shots in the past. But this one was a little bit different, I think, because it was like, wow, you took from me. And now because of that, like you're giving me a life back. You know what I mean? And so I don't know, it's just a different dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So let's talk about your mental and emotional state while going through this. What was the impact on you personally throughout this process?
So I was like a deer and like getting slammed by a Jeep in the middle of the night, like nobody saw it coming. That's for damn sure. I mean, you never are ready for anything like that. But like, I just celebrated, it was 9 years ago, this past month. So it's like things happen in life, and like it's perception and reaction. It's how you perceive it, and then how you perceive it is how you can react to it. So if you see it differently, you're going to react to things differently. And I don't care what anybody else says, especially because I used to be one of those drug addicts and nobody wanted to help them. And so why wouldn't I want to help them? Because that is one of me. It could be you, it could be her. You never know when it's going to happen. So, and I hope to God it doesn't. But if you're here, you might as well make the best of it.
No, I applaud your viewpoint out of it. I think that's it's still, because when I talked to my wife, even I said, well, I'm going to interview this lady today, and this is her story, and this is what, of what I know of it. And she's like, so she helped him? I'm like, yeah. She's like, why? I'm like, I don't know, but that's what I want to find out.
Gotta be
So,
a good
yeah,
person, man. Like, honestly, when I met with him the first time, I was perfectly ready for him to tell me to go like F myself. And I would have been okay with that, because forgiveness isn't for the other person, it's for you. And so I'd be like, hey, I tried. But he was so broken and didn't have anybody either. So it was like, hey, I'll help you. You tried to, step on my toes, abuse my, the privilege and whatever. I'm gone. But he was like, no, I'm done. I'm ready. And he was. And so not only was I able to prove that the only thing more powerful than drugs and addiction and depression is love and forgiveness, but it sustained itself, because up until about 3 months ago, I hadn't seen him for about 2 years, and he has his own business now, and it's successful, and he has his kids. And I mean, it's a wonderful thing for him. And it's a great thing for me to see that I can take something bad and turn it into something good.
yeah, absolutely. No, that's fantastic. That you guys are able to maintain or sustain that type of relationship moving forward. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a couple questions about your
Sure.
husband, if that's
Uh-huh.
okay. So now you said that he was a veteran coming home from the Navy and dealing with PTSD. So how did he get to the point where, or how did he get an interaction with heroin? How did that all begin?
Um, well, he didn't know how to do it, hence why that person had to shoot him up, because he didn't know how to. So it wasn't a thing. The PTSD thing was, he was trying to get things under control, but he also was a jet mechanic on the aircraft carriers. So he's seen where the jets had land, and when they're supposed to catch that cable cord there to stop the jet, it's like snapped in half, and like, people have gotten broken in half, like, because it just
Sure.
flies.
Yeah.
I mean, almost getting, fixing a jet door and like the wind catching it and almost taking you over. And I mean, and don't forget too, he graduated the same year as me. We weren't high school sweethearts or anything. We've always been friends since we were 5. But when we graduated, it was June 2001. So right out of boot camp was September 11th and stuff too. So it was like there's a lot of stuff that you get. Our generation, no generation is used to doing that, but nobody expects like things like that to happen. And it's a lot. And then it's like 5 years worth of it. But I mean, he followed along with the Blue Angels. Again, as a jet mechanic, he was stationed over in Rota, Spain for a while. And we got to meet up traveling over there when I was at Oxford. And I mean, it was a cool experience. And he wasn't that kind of person his whole life. But when all that stuff kind of happened, a lot of drugs, as in doctor prescribed drugs, came into play. And personally, that's where things started going downhill. When they have you on like Seroquel and Ativan and Xanax, and I'm like he's just like a zombie. And so it was just a long bad demise. But the coroner said that had that not happened, there was a genetic malfunction in his heart. So within 6 months, he would have had a massive heart attack. And then so if I had to choose between the two, I think I would have chose him just falling asleep. to an accidental overdose, as opposed to having a massive, like they said his arteries were almost 90% corroded. Like, then what kind of a position then
Oh
am I?
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it's like, I just have to believe that it was for a good thing. And then the way that Nick, the guy that, I helped afterwards, hey, I mean, there's only little things you could do, but if you're not the example, you can't bitch about it.
No, agreed. No, and I have some experience in dealing with, I'm not former military, but I have family members who are, and having watched them go through the VA and trying to get medicines, and it's instead of getting real help, it seems that many times it's just let's write a script and and move them along their way. And so, for instance, I have a family member who'd go there, and it was just it was okay. Well, you didn't like that one. Let's try this one, and here's a different medicine. And it was just that, you know, I don't think that there was. I never really felt like there was real help given. I always felt that it was just let's get a script, move them on out the door, and get the next one in. It was almost, it was like a cattle farm for
Yeah,
medicines.
yeah, pretty
Um,
much. Still
and,
is kind of.
yeah, and so when you described your husband getting to the point where it was almost zombie like moving, kind of going through the motions, um, I understand that all
Every
too well.
pill was accounted for too the day that he died, to the T. So it's not like he was abusing his pills, or, I mean, he followed everything to the T. But he just wanted some relief, because when you're like uppers, downers, lefters, righters, I mean, come on, you can't get good with that.
No,
But
no, they have those poor guys kind of running in a circle with those medicines.
yeah.
So, okay, well that see now that helps me understand why he may have turned to an outside aid such as heroin and things like that, because having watched people go through the motions of those things and dealing with them, there's a need for some type of additional relief that's outside of that square box.
Mhm.
So I get that I okay. So so he turned to those for that aid, for that assistance. So in having your own experience with addiction and things, what were some of the things that you personally had to do in order to help yourself move forward? Because now you've talked about how you helped this other gentleman
Mhm.
move forward and help him get himself on the square. But how did Stacy help herself back in the days of the oh so many Vicodins?
Yes. Well, I'll be 17 years clean off of all that hard stuff. That was in October. So I had an amazing father. Like I said, we grew up on a farm, so we didn't have much. But my father, and I didn't know this until we went through it myself. But he was one of the first people with OxyContin in the 90s, because he got hurt at work and with his back. So he understood the withdrawal and the coming down from it. It wasn't anything that I ever even noticed, or because I was a kid. But he was able to stand by my side. He literally stood up every night when I needed to talk, or when I just like, he would just keep an eye on me. And then every single day I had to go to the family doctor, and I had to take either a urine test or a blood test to prove that I had nothing in my system, and that went on for about 2 or 3 months. They just didn't want rehab to be on my record, which I don't think that it can be on your record now. I don't even know, but whatever the case is, they cared enough about me to give me a try. And in the meantime, my father's like reminding me who I was, because he's like, you don't know who you are, and so he'd tell me all the stories about, my great grandparents, where they gave him just a couple days to live. And and my great grandmother said, nope, I have a job to do, I have to raise my boys. And she went on to live for 25 years after and outlive the doctor, like, and stories like that just keep going and going. And he's like, the same blood that ran through their veins runs through yours. So the tenacious toys, he invented the tenacious toys. So he's like, you could do it, and so they get back up, and he's like, it doesn't matter if you get up, put one foot in front of the other, and you say hello to somebody, and that's the best you can do. Fine, you did good. All right, we'll try again tomorrow. So I think it's just the change in the mentality. I went from the woe was me to the, I have hope in me type thing. And yeah, so I'm thankful so much for my dad. for giving me that mentality.
Okay. No, that's cool. Your dad sounds like a great man. Um, but so some of the other people that I've talked to who are balancing, the post addiction life and having to have moved forward past those things, they talk about having to change their people, their places, their things, not only if it's alcohol, but also for drug addiction as well. Um, what were some of the people, places, things that you had to change in order to help yourself not only get clean, but stay clean?
Oh, I had everything. I had to like change all, most of my friends dropped me anyways, because at the point when they found out I had been asking for help, but nobody knew what to do with me, like I said. So I became more of a liability. I was like a threat to myself and others, I guess is what they would call it, just because I was down and I was asking for help. So I didn't have a lot of friends. All of the, sometimes the garbage takes itself out, I guess, in those moments in time. But I didn't have anybody except for maybe like two or three people. But I still went back to school the following semester and I kept going. And, it was really difficult, but my father really pushed that. He's like, you're going to show them, like, if you can do this, you're going to do it and you're going to finish it. And I did. So,
So you finished school at Oxford then?
not, no, I went to Oxford. I actually went back to Oxford a couple of times to do a couple of different courses. I graduated from Elizabethtown, which is where I got to Oxford from. It was a study abroad program. And then I ended up, um, uh, going into these other classes over there that weren't connected to that. But yeah, ultimately, I ended up getting my master's degree in journalism from the University of Maryland. So I've been all over the place. But then I was accredited twice from the board of Oxford University for when my book comes out eventually, it'll be like accredited by. So
That's
yeah,
cool.
I just like to learn a lot.
No, that's great. I think that's fantastic. All right, so cool. So yeah, so there was definitely a change of your people, your places, your things. So, okay. Now a couple other people that I've talked to when it comes to addictions and these things, they kind of have, some of them have almost a mantra, a daily thing that they do to help themselves move forward. Do you use anything along those lines? Is there something that you tell yourself each and every day
Yep.
that
My number one rule,
so
don't be an asshole. You seem simple.
that seems pretty, I was gonna say that's a pretty solid one.
Seems simple.
It's increasingly more difficult in 2020, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because some of them, we've had different varying degrees of what the mantras are for each and every person. But okay, um, what is the hardest part about all of this for you? What was the hardest thing? Now, past the point of asking for help, past the point of actually going and getting the help, what is the most difficult or the hardest thing that you've had to do in regards with your own sobriety since then?
Well, I mean, not only bury my husband, but also stay strong for our kids at the time that were 6 and 4, and also realize that that could have very well been me, going into the ground. Life and reality and all of that stuff is not something that I hide from. I get autopsies for Christmas from my, deputy coroner cousin. Just I like to see how like life is real and stuff like that, but it makes me not take it for granted, if you will. Um, yeah, I don't know. We get dealt cards, and the hardest thing I think I ever had to do is accept, the flag. I don't deserve to be saluted. I didn't go over there. I am way too chicken shit to go over and do anything that any of our men and men and women of the military can do. So it's like I didn't feel like I deserved it, but it was. I don't know how you get the strength either because it's like you accept it, and like I handed it over to the boys and I'm like, aren't you so proud of daddy? Because I didn't want it to be like a traumatic experience. I wanted it to be like a proud moment for them.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
they're doing very well. And they just honored my husband this year on the Wall of Heroes. Both of our boys were there, and I was, and it was so nice. It's essentially a wall of heroes for people who fought for us overseas, but then didn't get to they lost the battle when they got home, whether suicide or addiction or whatever, depression. And so
That's
it's
a nice honor.
nice. Yeah,
That's a
I was really thrilled about it. They couldn't have done a better job.
no. It's nice that respects are paid. That's nice.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. So you've moved past all that. Now you've mentioned that you're writing a book and are working on a book, and I know that you have a film out there. We'll get to those in just a moment. Um, but there's a couple more questions I'd like to ask you before we get to those. Now, there's two things that I always like to talk to every guest about, and because I like to see how each individual person uses what's happened in their life to and how it affects them. So, first one is looking back over the entirety of your life's journey without reducing it down to just one sentence. What's the most important thing that life has taught you?
Um, to love and forgive, no matter what.
Okay. Yeah, so love, I'll go back to the sentence you said earlier, and I really like that. I wrote it down. In fact, that forgiveness isn't for the other person; it's for you.
Mhm.
I like that. I think that really kind of hits home because I think that just looking at your story, if anybody was going to be uh, unwilling to forgive somebody for something, I think helping someone lose their battle, I think is pretty high up there. Okay,
Yeah, you don't want to carry that weight around though, because it just weighs you
no,
down.
no, I agree. I agree absolutely. Okay, very good. Now you mentioned that your dad had a pretty big impact on you and the stories that he told you and things along those lines. So I think your dad will probably be involved in this next question, although I'm not I'm not guaranteeing it.
Mhm.
But the other question I like to ask is now when I was 16, I was in a pretty dark place myself, and I had somebody give me some advice, and that advice said it's not how you fall down that matters, it's that you get back up.
Mhm.
And my kids are probably sick of hearing that because I repeat that advice to them. That is probably my life's mantra at this point. I use that for just about everything in life because it doesn't matter how we fall. We're all imperfect. We're all going to make mistakes. It's that we get back up and we keep moving.
That's right. You can't
So,
let life keep you down.
absolutely. So, what is the best piece of advice that Stacey Toy has ever been given that you use on a day to day basis?
Ooh, I don't know. I learned don't be an asshole from someone, and and I adopted it.
Okay.
I don't these like the mantra stuff is great, but I don't even think it's like the mantra thing. I think it's just I always make sure I take the time and I take 3 seconds or 5 seconds, like all random times throughout the day, and I just look around and see where I'm at. Whether I'm on stage and just be grateful for that moment, or if I'm just walking in the woods and stuff. It's like I'm walking on this trail like not too long ago, and I'm like, the mighty oak was once just an acorn or stood its ground, and I'm like walking on thousands of acorns, and I'm thinking, which is the one that's going to stick and how come, like, so I'm just one of those people that like tries to just take it all in and learn from everything around me. I guess I'm an old hippie, if you want.
That's okay. You're an old soul. That's fine. Uh, no, but I think that's good too. I mean, some people call it a mantra. I just call it a saying for life. But I think that your approach to things is actually, I think it's very healthy. I think that that's a good thing to do because it allows you to look at different aspects of all these different situations and scenarios of life and try and find a healthy way through them. So I think that's good. Okay. So the time has come that we need to talk about Stacey Toy. Let's talk about the things that you've got going. Now, you said you're working on a book, and I know that you have a movie out there. So tell everybody a little bit about each, or what you can tell us about each, and what you're working on, and how these things are came about.
Well, the first one, 100 Acres of Hell, is now currently streaming on like Amazon and Vudu and on demand and all these streaming platforms. So if you look it up, it stars WWE superstar Gene Snitsky, and supporting actor is Ernie O'Donnell from Clerks and all the Kevin Smith movies. So that is awesome. It's actually up for a really big award and is going to be featured up at the Magic Castle on December 11th at Shockfest Film Festival. And Ernie O'Donnell is actually up for a supporting actor role. So we obviously can't go out there because we're East Coast, but we do have some of our people out there on West Coast to accept it, which is exciting. The book part, so I'm working with a writer to write a screenplay based off of the events of my life, basically my addiction and losing my husband to it and forgiving the guy and then everything in between. And so we're working on that. And when that gets together and we can film it, and comes out, I'm just going to release like all of my journals and everything else, because I was a journalism major. I'm a writer at heart. My entire life I've kept journals. That's like where I've just put all my thoughts, and so I kept everything. And I want to release those too, so kind of everybody could see the change in like my handwriting or how I'm thinking, or like how, oh my god, there's days it's just like anxiety, like, and it's just insane. Even I didn't even realize, like, wow, I was like really bad, like, until you go back and actually get back into your head from back then. It's interesting. So if I'm going to put the movie out, if I'm going to tell everybody what's going on, here you go, here's the books. Ultimately, I wanted to be somebody that I didn't have at 3 o'clock in the morning when I couldn't sleep, and I had nobody to talk to, and I was like, at my worst and like wanting to kill myself, and because I didn't know what to do or turn. And so I hope that those kinds of resources would be able to help somebody, because there's no inspirational memes back in 2003 because Instagram didn't exist.
Exactly. Okay, cool. So where, so you talked about, the movies out on all these different streaming platforms. Where's it on, is there any one website that people can go for to find out more information about you? Should they want to find out information about
Sure. If
you?
you want, you can look up on my IMDb. I have an IMDb page. I have Stacey Toy, STACEYTOY, on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Don't forget the E, or else it goes to my cousin, and I probably won't see it for 6 months or so. And then 258 Studios, the number 258studios.com is our production company. And you can find us there, spelled out, 258 Studios on Facebook and on Instagram.
All right, very cool. So yeah, so a lot to consider, a lot to take in here. Um, Let me ask you one more question before we let you go here.
Sure.
What's the biggest piece of advice that you can give someone who is not right now struggling?
You got to do something. Whatever it is, you got to do. If you want to go to a meeting, go to a meeting. If you hate going to the meetings, then go find something else. Like, you're always going to find something that you're not going to like in the beginning, but you got to find something that's going to at least keep moving you forward. Because if you don't, you're done. If you want to get help, you'll get help. So I know it's terrible, like weird, hard thing to say, but like all of us get thrown into it and it's the worst point in time. So it's like, let's figure it out. But at least keep going. If you don't like this, that's fine. Then try something else. But don't stop trying, because there's something for everyone out there. Some rehabs don't allow you to watch TV and play music and stuff. That would never fly for me. It won't fly for
No.
a lot of people. But if you can have somebody at least say, I could pick my guitar or something, and they can write songs at a certain point, then that might be for them. So you have to really do your homework. And I know it's the worst point in time, but you have to, and family has to be supportive. And if they're not, then you have to make, your own new family, if you will, somehow. And you have to be able to trust people at some point, but just do it, because if you don't do something, you're going to be dead.
Yeah, something is definitely better than nothing, and
Yeah.
don't quit. Okay, good. Well, thank you so much for being on today, Stacey. I've enjoyed your conversation, and I I have to tell you, I am so very impressed by the fact of, and I know that's not why you do these interviews and things along those lines, but I know you're not looking for accolades, but I do find it impressive that you were able to forgive this other man. You're able to help him. And I think that speaks a lot about you and your character. And so kudos to you for doing so.
Thank you so much. I almost had to die for this stuff to happen.
Yeah, right? Oh,
but thank you so much. I really do appreciate everything.
Yeah, no, this is great. I very much enjoyed having you on, and we'll be sure to share your additional contact information when we post this episode.
Perfect. If you need anything else, give me a holler.
All right, will do. All right, guys, that's going to conclude us today for Focused on Forward.
Well, that concludes another episode of Focused on Forward. To be a guest of Focused on Forward, you can reach us through Twitter at podcastfof, through our Facebook page named Focused on Forward, or through email focusedonforward@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing each and every one of your stories that has yet to be told. So until then, be safe, be kind, and be loving to one another as you stay focused on forward.